Just a quick reminder before we jump in. Everything we share here is personal and subjective and meant for entertainment and educational purposes only. We reflect on patterns and dynamics from our lives, research, and what we've learned from our work. But this isn't professional advice or a substitute for therapy. When we mention people like family, friends, or exes, those references are intentionally vague or altered to protect privacy and don't reflect every person in our lives who fits those labels. Our goal is to support healing, not blame. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential. Welcome to the episode where we talk about what actually helps people take accountability, grow, and transform when they've caused harm, instead of just canceling them. Because with cancel culture, there's a lot of pressure to apologize right away, and that doesn't actually create real repair. And it also doesn't create real transformation in the person. So if we're actually trying to change behavior and help people grow, cancel culture isn't going to do it. So I'm going to start by saying it is never the victim's responsibility to create the conditions for the person who harmed them to grow, change, or feel safe enough to reflect, right? That's not on them. That is a misuse of empathy. It puts the burden of someone else's healing on the person who was already hurt by them. So here are some things that the victim is not responsible for. Regulating the emotions of the person who harmed them, offering forgiveness or contact, conversation, connection, explaining the impact of the harm if they don't want to, creating or facilitating repair, or holding space for someone's shame, guilt, or growth. So that's a boundary violation in and of itself. We will talk later about who is responsible for helping the person who did the harm grow and transform and all of that. But let's talk about what actually supports that accountability and growth after someone causes harm. So number one, people need a safe, regulated space to reflect. By safety, I mean psychological safety. They need to be able to face their behavior honestly without being flooded with shame or fear of being shunned or exiled, because that puts them into a defensive or dissociative state, which will block that self-reflection. It'll block learning around what did I do? Why did I do it? How did it impact this other person? Where is this coming from? And how can I do this differently? It takes a lot of courage to look at that. And so if we don't have the psychological safety of, I'm not a monster, people don't see me as a monster, they see me as someone who can grow and change, and it's okay to make mistakes. That's what helps with self-reflection, because it's safe to actually recognize and acknowledge that I made a mistake. But when a harmful behavior that someone from a healthy perspective should feel guilt about, if that guilt then moves into shame, which is not I did something bad, but who I am is bad, they're not going to reflect on that behavior. Because reflecting on that behavior means that they have to come face to face with the belief that they're an awful person, worth nothing. With cancel culture, we don't get psychological safety, right? I mean, people just want to ruin someone, really. And toward the end of last episode, you might remember us talking about how when you have these ideals that you believe so strongly in and your intentions are good because you think this is the right thing, if you believe in that so strongly that you then want to ruin someone to prioritize those ideals, you've moved from good to bad. And we need to really recognize that. So this is about how can we help someone look at their behavior which means that we need to be able to, like as a society, hold that it's okay for people to make mistakes because they're human. And it's just about protecting harm from the behavior, not ruining the person. Self-reflection requires nervous system regulation, and shame gets in the way of that nervous system regulation. So without safety, people protect the ego. And if you remember from the ego series, what protects the ego? Defense mechanisms. What do defense mechanisms do? They distort reality. So when you experience someone who has harmed and then they're projecting, they're denying, those are defense mechanisms. Denying is distorting reality by saying that reality doesn't exist. Projection is distorting reality by projecting aspects of themselves onto other people, which is what happens when you experience, they say a narcissist's accusations are really confessions.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because of projection, right? Denial and projection is going to get in the way of actually identifying and acknowledging, hey, here's what I did. So we actually really need this safety so that people can access their true selves and not have their ego come in and try to protect them. All right. So that's number one. Number two, you need to be able to have the opportunity to self-reflect without an immediate demand for some kind of performance, whether that's an apology or just a confession of, yeah, I am this awful person, right? When someone has harmed us or we're feeling so bad, we probably do want that immediate validation, but it actually gets in the way of that person truly identifying, why did I do this? What pain drove this? What belief drove this? Who was impacted? How were they impacted? And if they are pressured to perform, to apologize, then a real transformation won't really happen. They need to be able to experience and feel the impact of the behavior that they caused, not just intellectually know it. And when you pressure someone to apologize so quickly, what ends up happening is they just intellectually know what they're apologizing for. It's not this actual felt experience and deep knowing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've received apologies in the past that you can tell that the apology is just serving to clear the air. It's not actually this felt sense of, wow, I really messed up and there's something here that it's something bigger that I really need to take stock of and work through. And wow, I really did hurt you. And oh my gosh, the way that impacted this connection. Wow, it hurts me that I did this and that this is what happened. There needs to be that inner coherence before there can be this outer repair with another person.
I think about, there was a situation with someone that used to be close to me in my life that they caused me really big harm. They weaponized a trauma that I had. And that person, I cut off contact with them. And it wouldn't have been beneficial for me to explain anything, because then they would have just used my explanations and and it just would have perpetuated the cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they reached out a couple times, and each time that they reached out, they apologized, and I put that in air quotes. But the apology was, I don't know what I've done, but I'm sorry.
Right.
And that's like,
if you don't know what you've done, how can you be sorry?
How can you be sorry? Exactly. And to me, I'm like, well, you can't name the harm, and I'm not here to do the work for you.
Right.
And if you can't name the harm, you haven't self-reflected over this experience and the impact that you've had on me. And at that point, your apology is for yourself. It's not for the relationship or trying to create repair.
Right.
It's just about you trying to feel better about yourself, that, oh, well, I apologized.
Right. And to look better to others. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the ego conversation as well, of like trying to absolve yourself of guilt of the situation. It's like, if you sit with that guilt for longer, you might be able to figure out why you feel guilty.
Right.
What it is that you did that is causing that feeling and that discomfort to come up for you and is causing that rift within the relationship. But if you haven't spent time sitting with it and you just rush to the apology, then yeah, you're not ever going to have actual opportunity for change. You're not going to grow from it because you don't know what it is that you're growing.
And that's the definition of an empty apology. There's no actual substance to it. It's like, I don't know why this analogy is what's coming up for me, but it's like you're eating this food, but it only looks like food. It's actually air, like you're still
popcorn.
Hungry. Yeah. There you go. It looks like steak, but it's actually popcorn. Oh my gosh, our analogies. Yeah, definitely. So that's why there needs to be that. And that's why it also takes time, which is another thing that we need, because you need time to actually reflect and to make sense of this. And the goal isn't just stopping the harmful behavior. It's also transforming the underlying beliefs and the relational habits and even the identity that this person is holding on to that led to this. So,
well, if you don't do that, then you don't stop the behavior long term.
Right.
The behavior will come up again. So it's like you have to have the transformational aspect in it.
Right. And growth is a process. I mean, those of us who are working on ourselves and we're in therapy or we're working on our physical fitness, it does not happen immediately. You can't just be like, oh, I want to be super strong, so I'm just going to start with 500 pounds.
Yeah.
You can't just decide. It actually takes time. There's an actual process that's happening. You got to be a little caterpillar. You got to go in a cocoon. You got to become goo. I love bringing that up.
Oh my God.
And then you become butterfly. So you need time. You need to believe that you're capable of doing better. So, yeah, instead of, and I think that's part of this shift from, oh, this person's behavior is bad, so they're bad. Instead of that, it's the person's behavior is bad. They're probably good. So let's help them actually learn and grow. They need to believe that they're capable of doing better. And society, the people around them, need to believe that they're capable of doing better. So there's this restorative justice research that was done by Zehr, it's Zehr, Karp, Karp, and Umbright, Umbreit. And it shows that transformation happens when people are invited into accountability, meaning you're capable of doing better. You can do better. So it's this invitation of there's more here. It doesn't end here. This can get better. So when people are seen as capable of growth, they're more likely to rise to meet that vision. And accountability is different than punishment. It means owning the harm done, understanding its impact, and taking action to make it right. And it doesn't require a relationship with the harmed party. It's more about, I acknowledge this and I'm repairing what I can. And then it's also, I'm not going to do this again. So you want guilt, you don't want shame. And being capable of doing better means I'm good, which is the opposite of shame, because shame believes I'm bad. And then last but not least, boundaries. I mean, victims deserve boundaries and they might choose no contact, and that boundary should be respected. But boundaries can also be really helpful for the person who caused the harm, because if they're still in relationship with this person and interaction and communication, it can almost distract from them focusing on themselves and reflecting. And it can be more about, well, what happened between the two of us, instead of, well, there's something here in me that I need to actually look at. Yeah. That's not always the case, because, harm can be done in relationships that the recipient of the harm doesn't want to go no contact. They want to still have a relationship. So it's fine. But if that person does want no contact, that actually can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. So what doesn't work? We've already kind of implied this, but I'm just going to explicitly state it. Rushing apologies to make the discomfort go away. Public shaming, aka cancel culture, because it hardens those defense mechanisms and it promotes image management instead of actual integrity and personal transformation. and believing that redemption isn't possible, because that prevents healing for all parties, really. So the TLDR, too long didn't read, is real repair requires safe, shame-reducing spaces, accountability that isn't dehumanizing, and time for internal transformation. So who's responsible for the growth? The person who caused the harm. They're responsible for seeking help. They're responsible for doing internal work. They're responsible for taking accountability, and they are responsible for creating repair without demanding a relationship or forgiveness. Their healing is their job. But there are also other people who are appropriate to help with that accountability process if they choose. There are community members like friends, family, especially when the harm happened in a shared community. Bystanders or mutual connections can play a crucial role. So they can set clear expectations around accountability. They can refuse to enable or justify the behavior. They can offer support that is both compassionate and boundaried. And they can model what it looks like to care without enabling or colluding in the defensiveness that might be coming up. And we will talk in a little bit about, well, what does it look like to set clear expectations around accountability? What does it look like to be compassionate and boundaried? Because I think it's important to actually make that concrete of what does that look like? There's also professionals like therapists or coaches that can help people regulate shame, defensiveness, facilitate understanding those root causes of like, well, why did I do this? Also, that internal transformation that someone is going through is often kind of like a reconstruction of their identity. Who am I? And that's actually what leads to the behavioral change. They can also teach, how do you repair? Like, what is responsibility in relationships? What am I responsible? What are they responsible? A lot of the time, harm happens unintentionally. And many of us didn't get models for how do you repair in relationships? Who's responsible for what? Like, we just don't know. So we need some help with that. So it's especially important that if the person who harmed others has a trauma history of their own, this can really help, because there are things that they need to heal. There's things that they need to learn about relationships. Last but not least, there are restorative justice facilitators or circles. Restorative justice is this process that brings together those who are harmed and those who are responsible for that harm, if the people who are harmed want to be involved. And that process helps them acknowledge the harm, take accountability, and collaboratively decide how do you repair it. So it is an alternative to punishment, or in addition to punishment. I mean, there might be a punishment, but it centers healing, responsibility, and reintegration instead of just shunning someone from society. There is research that shows that restorative justice increases satisfaction and reduces PTSD in victims. And it decreases reoffending the person who caused the harm compared to traditional punishment.
That's fabulous.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to look up that study, it's Sherman and Strang, 2007. Strang is such a fun word. Strang. Too good. So the key principle here is that we want to build these systems of accountability where survivors are protected and empowered, and then people who caused harm are given a realistic and structured path toward growth. And if communities can learn how to respond to harm without replicating trauma by engaging in cancel culture, that would be great. So here are the expectations of accountability. Name the harm without minimizing, without justifying, and without deflecting blame. Avoiding contact with the person that they harmed unless they're invited to, unless that person, wants contact, but respecting that boundary. Getting education, getting therapy, professional help to understand their behavior. Taking a break from visibility or leadership roles if trust has been broken. Not pressuring anyone to forgive or reconcile. And if it's part of a formal process like a restorative justice circle, providing regular updates. All those expectations aren't about punishment. They're about creating a container for real growth. And I really love step 1, name the harm without minimizing, justifying, or deflecting blame. I mean, like that,
Yes.
I think that's almost all of it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not because you actually need the transformation, but you need to have transformation to even get to the place of naming the harm.
Yes, that's exactly that. If you haven't changed internally, you can't recognize what you did wrong.
Right, exactly.
And you can't speak to it in an honest way. It's like if someone's just saying, I'm sorry I hurt you, it's like, fuck off. That's not it. Like, how did you hurt me? What was the impact? Do you understand what your choices did in my life?
Yeah.
And if you don't understand how that felt, well, you're probably going to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't trust it. Oh, gosh, there's a lot of things I'm thinking about here.
Tell me about it. Tell me everything.
I think about, there's two sides of it. The one side of it is like basically giving not permission. I'm going to fuck up the words here.
Okay. It's your turn.
Saying like, hey, I believe. I know. Yes, it's my turn for the half-baked thought. Essentially like inviting the person to take accountability and to grow and improve and saying like, I believe you can do better. Mm-hmm. Okay. So me, hi over here, a former unhealthy relationship, married girl who was in a very religious context and forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember, my ex-husband harmed me so many times over and over and over. And I think about it specifically in terms of like sexual trauma. That came up so many times for us. Mm. And every time it came up, I remember saying, I believe you can do better. I believe in you. I know you can get through this. I know you can get past this. We can figure this out.
Oh my gosh.
And the shitty thing is that I do and did. I have to create a boundary for myself because I'll give him too much empathy, which, gaslights myself.
Right.
But at the time it was like, yeah, I do believe that you can do better. And I know that this is within you. You have all the potential. Like I believe in the person that you are and I believe in everything that you can become. And, I loved the person, right?
Yeah.
So I want to create the room for that. And I want to empower him to be better and to do better. And at the same time, holding space for that is what allowed me to continue to be harmed.
Right.
Because
exactly.
in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, if I love him and I believe in him, I'm not going to leave his side.
And that's porous boundaries, right? Because you're prioritizing connection over self-protection.
Yes. And understanding now that I'm thinking, like, with all the context of the information that we have now, I know that he had a weak ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so reasonably, he wasn't going to get there with me there.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
And that, like, that's the piece too, where you said the no contact thing can be helpful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because there was a point once we separated and I was like, this is never going to happen again. Like, sorry, I'm never going to be in contact with you in terms of relationship ever again. There was a point where he did actually acknowledge the harms that he had caused me, which was like the first time ever.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, if I didn't have so much evidence in my mind, I might consider working on this now, like, so much later. But it took being devoid of the thing that was his emotional security and connection to being good.
Yes.
Because I reiterated over and over and over, no, you are good. I believe in you. You can do these things. You have potential. I see good in you. Me leaving him from that, he couldn't just rely on me being his crutch. He had to sit with the feelings.
Yeah. Can I offer something?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think that someone else could, a friend, a family member could be the one to say, you're good. You have capability, all that. You have potential. It just shouldn't be you. And I think what he lost wasn't only someone saying you're good, but he lost access to you. So he was still being reinforced. There was no reason to look at that. And one of the things that Codependency Kate, she's been showing up on my TikTok and I've been listening to her podcast, The Gray Area. Y'all should go listen to it. She said that it's not lack of emotion regulation skills, it's entitlement. that leads to people pushing past your boundaries over and over and over again and harmful behavior, a pattern of harmful behavior. And I think it's both, but that really stuck with me. I've been thinking about that a lot recently, that this entitlement of, I get to treat you this way. And she explains it as, well, if this person treats you like shit and doesn't treat every other person that way, then that's entitlement.
Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
for me, the people that I don't have relationships with anymore because I have boundaries to protect myself, there was entitlement there because they would be shitty to me because of the nature of my relationship with them, but they wouldn't be like that with their boss, right? And a lot of the times this is more nuanced than that, because at the same time, people who do this are in some ways being shitty to other people, right? So other people in the role of girlfriend or wife would there's entitlement there, right? Or there's a different level of entitlement with how you're going to talk to the server at the restaurant, because if you look down on them, you feel entitled to treat them a certain way, but maybe you don't feel as entitled. You're not going to physically hurt them, whereas your partner, you might, right? So there's different levels of entitlement.
Well, to that end, I think about it from a religious context too, because I think that was part of it. Is from a religious context, you don't get divorced. At least the religion that he and I were involved in. You don't get divorced. You get married for life. Divorce doesn't happen. And I remember seeing some sort of reel or something on this from, I think it was Jimmy on Relationships or the speech
boundaries
professor.
Culturally too, that you don't get divorced, just FYI from our last. I just want to share for the selfies. Have we talked about porous boundaries and how they show up culturally? That's a really good example of that.
Yes, exactly. And it's like there's this mindset in some religions or cultures that, okay, once you get married, you're locked in. So then you have quote unquote permission to do whatever the fuck you want because they're not leaving. There's no consequence.
You don't have consent a lot of the time too. There are some perspectives and beliefs that once you're married, that you own the body of the person that you're with.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was when.
Also porous boundaries.
So after I got divorced, I've mentioned that there was a very, I don't want to call it violent, but it was violent, sexual assault situation with my ex-husband. And this was once our divorce was in process during the fucking pandemic, and I was having a panic attack. It was awful. And I remember it took me 4 or 5 months to even bring it up to my therapist because, and I remember when I started explaining it to them, I started qualifying it, and I was like, but I don't think it was that because we were still legally married. And so I was like, I couldn't have been violated because by legalities, like, I don't think that this is actually a thing. And like, he couldn't have violated my boundaries because technically we were husband and wife, and like the divorce hadn't been fully processed yet. And like, so it, like, that was such a deeply ingrained, like, cultural and religious piece that it felt like it took away power from me.
Yeah. For sure. Oh, definitely. Of course.
That I couldn't validate my own experience. Yeah.
You're right to consent.
My own fucking body.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I want to say, which is going to sound kind of like the opposite of what we're talking about, is that with the being no contact or not having a relationship with that person, then they lose that entitlement. And there is they lose access to you. They lose all the benefits of being with you. So they have to look at themselves. And I just said that, okay, they're entitled to do this to you, but maybe don't feel like that with other people. But at the same time, people who have a pattern of causing harm are being shitty in other ways with other people. It's not just you. A lot of the time, what can distract them from doing their own reflection is that they're talking in their heads or to you or to other people about, well, they did this or they said this or they did that, instead of, okay, well, I'm not continually getting this supply of interactions with them that I can talk about. So I actually ran out of that and have to just sit with myself and what's going on for me.
So you're saying that because there are no new circumstances
Yeah.
coming up that they can latch onto,
Yes.
that they ran out of things to talk about, so they have to work on themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
They have to sit with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
They ran out of things to blame, which, I mean, isn't always the case. I mean, people can really be committed to staying out of accountability. But we're saying if there is someone who's going to be able to do the work, then this can be more helpful. And when I think about the people that I don't have a relationship with, it's so much focus on me, that the problem is that I'm holding this boundary and that I'm no contact, and that they don't understand why, even though I've told them literally in writing to make sure that I can't gaslight myself. They're like, no, I told you, it's right here. It's very clear. But there isn't a recognition of, okay, but the dynamics that showed up in our relationship that you have a boundary against, I have also engaged in, not me, but that person has also engaged in that dynamic with other people, right? I'm not the only person. I'm not the only one who's experienced this. I know of other people who have experienced this. I know of people who have reached out to me who have experienced similar things, who are in a different type of role than the role that I was in this relationship. So when there's so much focus on, oh, well, it's why do they have a boundary, or what did I do? It's like, okay, but let's look at the pattern and what the common denominator is here.
Right.
And so the no contact can really help with that sometimes, if it's going to help.
Yeah, if there's possibility for
If there's possibility.
That's where it might start.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that holding someone accountable is really just about holding expectations. These are the expectations, and unconditionally, I see you as a human being who, I think going back to the ego episode, who has psychological, maybe immaturity, that maybe you're earlier in the process of development, but I still see that you're a human who could mature. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to see you positively overall, as in terms of your potential, and also knowing that you've probably experienced things that hurt you that you haven't worked through. And I'm still holding the expectations and the limits that, like, there's certain behavior that's not okay, and you need to be able to recognize that and shift that. So that's really about holding boundaries without dehumanizing them. The person who is holding them accountable is staying in their seat instead of rescuing them and enabling or colluding in the defensive behavior or blaming other people. And they're also modeling for that person, here is how you hold expectations and, talk about negative behavior without shaming a person, because they probably haven't experienced that, and they probably therefore have shamed other people. So I just want to end by sharing, what could this sound like to hold someone accountable while also still holding their humanity? You're offering care for them without shielding them from the consequences of their behavior. Whether those consequences are practical, like, yeah, you told your boss to F themselves and now you don't have a job. I am not going to give you money to help you. That was a consequence of your behavior. Or the consequences of their behavior might be that they feel guilty. We don't want to shield them from that. We want to let them feel guilty. Maybe we want to help them not feel shame, but we don't want to shield them from, okay, you feel like crap about something you should feel crap about. That feeling is there to get you to do the work, to do the reflection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what could this sound like? It could sound like, I care about you and I want you to grow from this. That means I'm not going to co-sign excuses or gossip. I'm here if you want to help, if you want help finding a therapist or someone to process this with, but I won't be part of avoiding the truth. Or, I believe you're capable of doing better. But doing better requires owning what happened and stepping back, maybe in a role or maybe in a relationship or something like that, stepping back in terms of that. And that's the most respectful thing you can do right now. I think about a lot of the times people who have caused harm will say, well, they're still upset. What else can I do? And it's, you can respect that they need time. You can respect that they're going to be hurt for a while instead of rushing it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another way this could sound is, I'm not going to cut you off from connection with me, but I can't be your sounding board if you're just going to be defensive and blaming. If and when you're ready to talk about it with accountability, I'll listen. So it's, I'm here. I see you. I think you're capable. It's okay to make mistakes, and it can't happen again. And you got to own it.
Yeah.
And you got to change it. So what that isn't is rescuing or defending, which could sound like, oh, they didn't mean it that way, or you didn't mean it that way, right? It's not silencing the victim, right? So people will say like, oh, let's not dwell on this, or just let it roll off your back, or they were just really upset that day, or they've been going through a lot, right? It's not centering their feelings over the harm that they caused. So a lot of times people will say, oh, well, they feel so awful already, I don't want to add to that. When it's really, okay, they feel awful. That makes sense. It makes sense that you feel awful. And that shows that there's a moral compass in there and there's guilt there. You weren't in alignment with your actions. What is that awful feeling telling you to do? You know, that's very different than, oh, you feel awful? Okay, let's just like, no expectations, no limits. And it's also not pushing reconciliation. You have to talk to them and make peace. You have to make this better.
One of the things that comes to mind for me as someone who tends to be overly empathetic in situations like this and does the rescuing and kind of just gives too much permission for the person to harm again, simply because I dislike that they feel uncomfortable and that, they're dealing with a lot of guilt that might be pushing into shame.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they're not even dealing with the shame. They're just explaining the guilt, and just letting the silence be is something that's been helpful for me. Like if the person says like, oh yeah, I fucked up. I did this awful thing. I'm really sorry about that. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like letting it set in.
Yeah. As opposed to saying, oh,
past the moment.
Yes, exactly. Like letting that moment sit and recognizing that, okay, I'm not just going to let this pit her off, because to me, that's kind of what opens the door for the next moment where they do it again. In my experience, where I've had people that have continued harm, is I've rushed the acceptance of that, and I've not like really held the boundary and held the consequence of, hey, you can't, continue this behavior. I've just been like, oh no, I know you didn't mean it, like that, and it's fine, it's okay, we'll get past this, yada yada, as opposed to just sitting there and saying thank you.
Yeah.
And letting that moment of silence sit.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit more power.
Holding space. We talk about holding space for our own feelings when we're feeling sad and having self-compassion, so that we can actually have that experience. What you're talking about is holding space so that the weight can be felt.
Yes.
And it's validating.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I don't think that this is what you were implying, but I just want to be really clear so that selfies don't misunderstand it. The people who have continued to harm me, I have kind of rushed past that moment and not let it sit. You didn't say this, but I want to make sure that people don't misunderstand and think that what you meant by that is that it's your fault that they kept harming you because you didn't let it sit.
Right.
Because I know that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is letting it sit is something that has them really feel and has you really feel and receive the validation of that apology. And actually acknowledging it. It helps you not feel gaslit, and it makes them sit with the truth and the reality of the impact. And that is more likely to help them grow, but it's more for you. And if they keep harming you after that, that is not your fault. And if they keep harming you, even if you rush past it, that's not your fault either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also have in the past. I mean, it's still my urge. I don't think that'll ever go away. I think because just naturally, even before becoming a therapist, I have always had what's called unconditional positive regard, which is that unconditionally, I see humans, I can see them positively in some light. Even if they've done something awful, I know that it's more complex and nuanced, meaning that hurt people. And I do think that there might be just some actually bad people. Like, I think evil might exist, that you could have no trauma. And I don't know. I think that might exist. I don't really know. I've kind of gone back and forth on that, but I do think that might exist. But I guess if someone is struggling, or if someone is hurting, or if someone is feeling uncomfortable, I just want to help them not feel that way, especially if there's potentially shame, or I can see, especially with people who are emotionally immature, I mean, they're developmentally younger. And so it's kind of like you can see the child in someone almost sometimes.
Yes.
And
I literally think about that all the time. When you were
Really?
saying like that you have unconditional, what was the wording?
positive regard.
Yes, unconditional positive regard. So the way that I think about it is that people like have inherent worth. And like, to me, when you were explaining that, I was like, yeah, I see the child version of them. I envision the version of them that is pure.
Yes.
And then shit happened.
Exactly. That's where the compassion comes from, because like how you were saying with your ex, where sometimes you'll get angry and you'll be like, oh, I hope he hurts. And then there's the compassion that comes in and you're like, no, I don't want him to hurt, And that went for me. And I think what you're saying is this is how it happens for you. When that happens, it's because I am seeing the child in them. I'm seeing the defenseless, innocent, good intentions.
Who I believe most people are at their core.
I think most people are too. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think the majority of people are. The people who I, in my life, don't have contact with, I believe are that at the core. There's no one evil or bad in my life.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so sad. That's, because for so long, and we will talk about this in a future episode where we talk about acceptance of reality, which is a really hard thing to do. For so long, I held on to, well, yes, I see this child part, or not part, actually. It's like the immaturity where they're at this level, but it can get better. And I see where they're struggling, and I see that their ego is hurt, and that they're just trying to protect a weak ego. And that hurt is real. That shame is real. I don't want them to feel that. But in order to actually work through that in a relationship, they need to be able to have the tools and the skills to do that, which comes from the maturity. So you're trying to work through things with someone who they're not equipped to work through that. And so you have so much compassion for them, but you can't actually work it out with them because they can't be an equal in terms of the maturity level there, or the accountability. So then all that's left for you, if you want to take care of them or soothe their wounds, is caretaking. It is codependence. It is self-abandonment.
Oh, fuck.
That's the only option.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've done that. And so now I still have that urge. I had it today with someone. I saw the kid in them. I saw it. And I so badly just wanted to take care of the kid. But I knew I can't. Because if I take care of this kid, I'm bypassing the fact that they're an adult. It's going to lead to codependence. It's going to lead to them being overly dependent on me. It's going to lead to them acting in ways that overstep boundaries, which they don't even, and they don't understand boundaries and they don't, and it's like, yes, they're just clueless and they're just lost. And that's so sad, but I can't. And in the past I thought, well, I'll just explain it to them. I'll just explain it, but they don't get it. They have child language. They don't have adult language. It's like you're speaking French to someone who only knows Spanish. They have to learn French before you can do that with them. So it's like you kind of have to see people where they are in terms of their maturity level, and you see the child and you're like, my heart is broken and I'm grieving the fact that this is what it is right now and I can't change what it is, and I just have to let it be and walk away. That's so hard, but that's what you have to do. You can't save them.
If I was listening to the podcast right now as the selfie listener, I would need to pause this and like sit and reflect. As someone who is, been guilty of getting into codependent relationships, and
I know,
it sucks.
I know.
The analogy that it made me think of is actually a story from a friend that I had many moons ago. Different season of life. His daughter had a little lemonade stand. Aww. And the person that was buying lemonade, the adult, came in with a $50 bill to buy a glass of lemonade. That was like $3, right? Yeah, yeah. And the little kid, because she doesn't understand the currency that is being exchanged, she doesn't know what $50 is.
Yeah.
She receives the $50 bill, puts it in the drawer, says, "Thank you, have a nice day." Which is funny, but if I think about it in this sort of situation, that the adult, the caretaker, the person that just wants to support, they came to support, and they offered their $50 bill for the purchase of a $3 lemonade, and the child that doesn't have the knowledge and the tools to understand what $50 means, and what they're supposed to return, $47 for that $3 lemonade, they just put it in the drawer and they said, "Thank you, have a nice day."
Oh my God, I love that analogy. Hold on. Let me just let it sink in. I have things I want to say about it. Oh my gosh, yes. That's exactly what it is. And then the next day they have their lemonade stand and you go by and you've set a precedent that you buy their lemonade and they're expecting it from you now. They're so excited. And then maybe you don't buy lemonade and now they're upset because why didn't you buy lemonade? Yeah. And you're like, because I'm going to lose all my fucking money.
I know, right? Because you give a $50 bill for a $3 lemonade.
Or you come and you give, $3 bills and maybe they don't understand what that means. And now they're upset because you gave them less or, because this is something that happens all the time. This is what happened for me, is that I was almost put on this pedestal, which dehumanized me. Usually when we talk about dehumanization, we're talking about it as we see people as less than, but it can also happen where you put someone on a pedestal and see them as like, they're so not human, nothing, they're just so happy and they're so resilient and they're so, and that's, I think, what happened again, using the child adult analogy, where you're like, oh my gosh, they're invincible almost. So what does that mean? If you think that this person's invincible and they have resources of energy and time that can't be depleted, then when that adult who's been put on the pedestal, when I was put on the pedestal and I had to start setting boundaries because I'm actually human and it's not unlimited. Yeah. And setting those boundaries, then they would get really upset and they would take it personally. And why are you not giving me this thing? This thing that you have so much of, you're being selfish, you're being stingy, or you don't care about me, and they really see it that way because they don't understand, which is again, what makes it so hard for you, because you think, well, let me just explain it to them so that they understand, but they can't understand.
Yeah, they don't speak that language. They don't understand that currency.
Yeah, and they see you as on this pedestal, but that's just a concept in their mind. It's not reality.
Mm-hmm. And I think about it too with the child analogy. They're excited about the thing they're getting. They're not
Yeah.
necessarily just excited about the person that's there.
Yeah.
It's like if you brought in, a 50 or even $100 bill, I think of the $100 bills because they redid them and they have that fancy blue hologram strip.
Oh,
And as a
yeah.
kid, if I was to receive that, I'd be like, ooh, look at this cool paper
Yeah.
that's got this
Yeah.
fancy hologram strip. I don't understand the meaning of it. I don't understand that it's worth $100.
Yeah.
Or look at that $50 bill that has that
Let me
cool
cut
face
it
on
and
it.
put
It's
the hologram
purple.
strip on my
Yeah.
wall.
Right. I know. Right. Oh my God. But then if you come by the next time and you just bring some old dingy quarters to pay with,
Right. Yeah. I'm mad.
it might still have this. You could bring $50 worth of quarters.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not as exciting to the kid.
Yes. Yes. And it's developmentally appropriate for a kid to be excited about and value what they get from you and not really care about you. Like that's normal and that's healthy. But when someone has the emotional immaturity, it means they're biologically older, but they still have this developmental stage that they're stuck in. It's just tough because so much of, we'll probably do an episode on this at some point, but so much abuse and neglect that happens is definitely from emotionally immature people. And it is from these kids in adult bodies who aren't even doing it intentionally.
Right.
The majority of abuse is not intentional.
Yeah. They don't understand that they've done it.
Yeah. It's just, I'm angry because I'm supposed to get this thing from you. You owe this to me. Mm-hmm. And you're not giving it to me, so now I'm angry at you. It's like a toddler. When a toddler doesn't get what they want, it's I hate you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's developmentally appropriate at that age. But if you haven't actually worked through that phase, you aren't in the next stages. So that's all you got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm glad we're talking about this. I feel like we just got into like a little part of our brains where we could talk more about the experience, which is always good because then you selfies can relate more. I think kind of the moral of the story here is that it's not your job if you've experienced harm, and you might have so much compassion and see that innocent child in them, and your heart might break, and it's still not up to you to take care of them. And we want a society and we want communities that are going to shift more in the direction of, well, I'm actually going to help this person. I'm going to create this container of accountability, of emotional safety, and reducing shame, and holding those expectations so that people actually can start to, that would create more emotional maturity and more development. Because as we know, if you go back to the ego episodes, go listen if you haven't, it's like necessary. If you've listened, you'll remember that the reason that we get stuck in emotional immaturity when we have weak egos, right? Because the more emotionally mature you are, the stronger your ego. A strong ego is actually good. That the weak ego and the not developing comes from not getting what you needed in relationships. So if someone is going to grow, if someone is going to have that internal transformation and be able to repair, and maybe they're not going to be able to actually have a relationship again with the person they harmed, but they're going to be able to have healthy, loving relationships in the future. Mm-hmm. And that's good for them and that's good for everyone else. And so if we can have a society, a community, a culture that can create more of this restorative container than just punishment and banishment and cancellation, there is more likelihood that on a collective, greater scale, we are going to have people who are more emotionally mature. So cancel culture came about because it was an attempt to protect.
Yeah.
But what's happening is it's actually creating more emotional immaturity.
Yeah.
So protect yourself. You are not responsible for any of that accountability container and support for growth. But what we do want is overall to contribute to a community and a culture that does do that. And if you are in a situation where you're the bystander or the mutual connection or the family of someone or friend of someone, if you have the bandwidth and it doesn't take you out of your seat, consider being one of those people, because you're not only contributing to the person who caused the harm or the person who received the harm, you're committing to a better world, to a better culture where we can be self-centered. Well, we love you all, and we're so happy that you're here with us and doing this work with us, because this is more than just about you. It's more about me. It's more than Katie, not about Katie. What did I say? It's not about us. It's not about the selfies. It's not about me. It's not about, well, it is. It's not just, it's not just about me or Katie or you selfies. It's also about the culture that we live in. And there are ways that we can contribute that can make real change without taking us out of our seat, as long as we are aware of where our seat is and we can get that healthy balance of I'm protecting me, but I'm maintaining connection in the cases when it makes sense, of course.
Yeah, definitely. And as a reminder, this was also talking about our bigger societal conversations around it. So if you want to contribute to your society, send this to a friend, someone who maybe could benefit from this episode or is also struggling with how do we change our society? How do we change our culture?
Yeah, that's a good
This
point.
is a great episode to send over, as well as the one that we did last week. So feel free to do that and share this with someone that you love, because we would love to continue impacting the world in a positive way and grow our selfie community.
Yeah. And if you haven't rated us, it's really quick to do it. You literally just click number of stars and it just adds to the number rating, the average that we have. So that's super easy. But if you would, we would love if you actually leave a review. That would do so much for us. Okay. All right. We love y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at selfcentered.pod or connect with us at selfcenteredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.